Regularly scheduled meeting of the Board of Fire Commissioners. The date is August 15th. Time is about 9:03.
Let the record reflect Commissioners Ibarra, Glacier, Hada, Woods Gray are present, and we have a quorum, Madam President.
Thank you, Faxu, and moment of silence.
Everybody please stand, right hand over your heart, ready, begin. Please join me in a moment of silence in honor of past and present members of the Los Angeles Fire Department who have devoted their lives to the protection of our community. Thank you.
So we start with Commissioner comments.
So I attended the opening ceremonies of the World Police and Fire Games at the Coliseum, and then I snuck away in order to make it to the family meeting for the new recruitment class, and both of those events I think were memorable in my mind, at least.
Very good. Good morning. I attended the graduation last week, as well as other commissioners. It was a very hot day, so I missed my opportunity to visit with many of the families, as I usually do, because it was a little warm. But it was a great group of graduates and a very diverse group, and considering we had one woman, but the diversity was there. And so we appreciate the department looking out and trying to work to make sure that we continue to increase the diversity within our department. But I enjoyed the being there with the group and seeing the number of people that were interested in the fire and the number of families that came out. There were a lot of families there, considering how warm it was, and I don't think we had any incidents of people falling out, at least not while I was there. We seemed to stay hydrated and cool enough, but it was a warm day.
I also enjoyed the graduation, and congratulations to all of our new firefighters and future firefighter paramedics. Also, I want to thank Fire Station 100 for hosting me for dinner a couple weeks ago, and had a nice visit with them and ride along. Thanks.
So moving on to report of the fire chief.
Thank you, Madam President. On August 2nd, we had a press conference at our air operations facility, and we showed off our new helicopter, our Augusta, at a cost of $17.5 million, and now we're very, very confident in the fleet. We now are operating off of one type of airship instead of two, and we're working on getting another one in the near future. We also showed off the Sky Crane, now they call it the Air Crane, and our lease agreement with them. And effective today, County has their Air Crane as well as two Super Scoopers. So we're at pretty much our full complement with us in the county in case we have any significant brush fires within the city. The next day, August 3rd, I did attend with you all the firefighter graduation at Drill Tower 81. It was a great event. It was a little warm. There was kind of the crowd was boisterous, more so than usual, and I think they're going to be a great fit in our fire department family. And then August 7th, I did attend the opening ceremony at the Coliseum with Mayor Garcetti and Chief Beck and Sheriff McDonald and Chief Osby. We have total 9,000 athletes from around the world, firefighters and police officers, competing in 64 different events. And there's the closing ceremony is tomorrow, and it's been great for morale. Our people have won many medals, some of them gold, and it was a great effort, and we look forward to future accomplishments from that group of people. And that's all I have.
Oh, Madam President, Chief, could I ask the Chief a question? Will we be able to get a printout or something to find out the results of the games for our LAFD people?
Absolutely.
Oh, thank you.
So verbal report by the department on significant incidents from August 1 to August 14th. Do we have any? We didn't have any last time.
We'll move
Well,
on.
why don't we go to approval report by the medical director for the same time period?
Good morning, everyone. Dr. Mark Eckstein, EMS Bureau Commander. Significant medical incident since our last meeting. Last night, about 11:30 p.m. in Fire Station 60's First Inn, there was a multiple victim shooting. We had several engines, multiple rescues, and command staff present to manage this incident with 3 patients with gunshot wounds, one of whom was pronounced dead on scene, and 2 criticals. On the 12th, we had a physical rescue traffic in Fire Station 7's First Inn about 9:15 p.m., also with 2 critical patients. On August 5th, we had 2 outstanding saves by our members. First one was at 7:45 in the morning. It was a young gentleman, 44-year-old male, collapsed on the street in the Valley Village area, Studio City area, and there was excellent job done by the dispatcher at MFC to recognize this gentleman was having a cardiac arrest, provided dispatcher-assisted compression-only CPR instructions. Life Force and Rescue 78 arrived on scene very quickly, transitioned to basic and advanced life support, and the patient regained pulses and expected to make a full recovery. Later on that same day, on August 5th, in Mid-City area, Fire Station 61's First Inn, 51-year-old female with reported seizure. Something we've stressed throughout our creation and ongoing training with the tiered dispatch system with all our dispatchers is the fact that a ongoing seizure may in fact be a cardiac arrest with seizure activity due to lack of oxygen flow to the brain. Indeed, that was the case here. Our dispatcher recognized it, provided compression-only CPR instructions over the phone to the bystanders, and the woman also regained pulses, was transported to the hospital, and is also expected to make a full recovery. And that concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you. So back to approval report by the department on significant incidents. Do we have a report?
Good morning, City Attorney, Chief, Commissioners.
Good morning.
I'm Assistant Chief John Drake, and I'm assigned to Operations Valley Bureau and have been honored to participate in the 2017 Los Angeles World Police and Fire Games. So I'd like to give you a brief overview of that. But this is related to significant incidents and activities for the period of August 1st through August 14th, 2017. Our vision with the LA World Police and Fire Games was to be a model leader in planning, coordinating, and executing exceptional World Police and Fire Game activities. We aspired to build camaraderie, promote sportsmanship, and strengthen unified relationships with our international public safety partners. And to date, although the closing ceremonies are tomorrow, we have been effective in that. 8,882 athletes, 70 countries, 64 sports in 41 venues, over 18,000 competitors at different venue locations. As I mentioned, there's 41 venues. Within the city of Los Angeles, there was 11 venues, 18 within the county of Los Angeles, and another 12 with allied agencies. So it was a huge endeavor with our multi-agency coordination and our partners throughout the region on a DHS level, FBI with LA Sheriff's Department, LAPD, etc. There were 2 venues in South Bureau, 6 in Central Bureau, 3 in Valley Bureau, and 1 in West Bureau of those 11. The major components that we implemented in this organization, which was a hybrid organization of an incident command system and a business model, because it was public-private partnerships in an 8-month preparation program that really typically requires years, but this was what we are calling a rescue mission from the city of Montreal, where there were contentious relations between the administrators, the city council, and public safety officials. So the city of Los Angeles was awarded this 8 months in advance. Our focus with the LAFD was, and also with the partnerships, was to address any medical suppression, public safety, and potential hazardous materials or terrorist activities. And to date, we've really only had significant medical issues at this. We had 1 fatality in Santa Clarita with a cycle rider, which I'm sure most have heard of. A reserve deputy sheriff fell on his bicycle in Santa Clarita and succumbed to his injuries. We've also had 6 transports, and about 100 patients were treated at the incident locally with doctors, because we're very fortunate to develop relationships with an Oasis Medical Group and medical doctors, physical therapists, chiropractors, paramedics, EMTs that volunteered a lot of their time. So the collaboration was on a very large level. And with that, that's just an overview. I'd be happy to entertain any questions if I can answer them.
Madam President, I have a question. I think it's probably for the chief more so than for Chief Terrazas. Who assumes the expenses for these games?
It is partially funded by the World Police Fire Games organization. PD has been the biggest piece of this, and we're pretty small compared to them. There is some paperwork going through right now that we're looking at to drill down what the actual costs were. We try to do it with as much on-duty people as possible to keep the costs down. So at the end of the day, we'll have to see where we're at the bottom line. We can give you an update at that time when that is finalized.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So moving on to presentations.
Good morning, Commissioners, Fire Chief Terrazas, and everyone else in attendance. Firefighter David Ortiz, Public Information Officer, Community Liaison Office. It is my honor to be here to help recognize a fellow firefighter, paramedic Christopher Kuzmich from Fire Station 89, for a life he saved off duty. I'm going to ask paramedic Chris Kuzmich to please join me up here so that everyone here and at home can see who he is. Firefighter Kuzmich went on a diving adventure in January of 2017 to the Coral Sea. There he was on a 12-day voyage that would take him to some very remote parts of this planet to see some of the most beautiful reefs in the world. He visited various reefs during this 12-day travel, and on the 10th day of his diving excursion, they found this beautiful reef teeming with life. And everyone, all the guests on board this excursion boat, decided to go diving, including Christopher and the boat captain, Craig DeWitt, and his wife, Camila. I'm going to direct your attention to the monitors to see the story that was covered by the news on what happened that day. No worries. Seems like the internet's slow today.
Yeah.
Well, the gist of the story is basically Mr. DeWitt was attacked by a bull shark. This bull shark attacked him and severely injured him. What the story tells is what happened in his recovery afterward. What it doesn't tell is what fire paramedic Kuzmich did to save his life. Immediately after the attack, when Kuzmich was surfacing, he heard screaming from about 100 feet away. The captain's wife, Camila, was screaming because her husband was attacked by a bull shark. While the excursion boat launched a rescue boat to go help Craig, firefighter paramedic Kuzmich began swimming towards the excursion boat.
The 55-year-old Australian national who lives in Papua New Guinea was swimming in waters off far north Queensland. At a depth of 15 metres, he was attacked by a bull shark. He suffered serious injuries to his left arm and wrist, as well as suffering from bite wounds to his abdomen. The attack occurred 120 kilometres from Murray Island in the Torres Strait, and emergency services were notified at 12:40 on Saturday.
Look, unfortunately, due to the remoteness of the situation, had the shark nicked a serious or a big artery, this could have been a fatal incident. The injuries to his forearm are quite severe in that he's lost some sensation.
The 55-year-old then faced a 3-hour boat ride to shore, where he was treated by a nurse at a small clinic on Murray Island. A rescue helicopter attempted to reach him, but severe weather hampered efforts.
The storm cells were rendering the conditions too unsafe for them to go in.
Finally, he was taken to Thursday Island, where he spent the night in hospital before the Royal Flying Doctor Services flew him into Cairns.
All in all, it's worked out really, really well, and we're quite pleased that we're able to bring him through to Cairns to be stabilised by the medical teams here.
Authorities say he is lucky to be alive, and he will now undergo surgery at the Cairns-based hospital. Danielle Robertson, Sky News Cairns.
As the news story says, Craig DeWitt is lucky. He's lucky to have fire paramedic Kusmich with him that day, because that is who saved his life. Fire paramedic Kusmich would have you believe that it was a team effort, because he delegated a lot of the rescue efforts to many of the people that were on board that boat, to the staff and to some of the guests that were on that boat. He immediately recognized that Craig DeWitt was suffering from some symptoms of shock, and he applied direct, immediate pressure to the worst injury on the left forearm of Craig. He described the situation as one where he thought Mr. DeWitt may not survive. He delegated tasks to the crew and to the guests that were on board that boat, and with the limited equipment he had, he did the best he could. Thankfully, Craig never lost consciousness, and there were a few moments that he was slow to respond. Kusmich was able, with the assistance of the crew, to cut Craig's clothes off, apply direct pressure to the wounds, place him in the shock position, begin treatment for decompression sickness, administer medications and oxygen under the direction of a physician via satellite phone. He continued that treatment all the way to the clinic, which was 5 hours away, even though the story said only 3. Mr. Craig DeWitt owes his life to fire paramedic Kusmich. And I'd like to read the certificate that he is being presented today. Christopher T. Kusmich, firefighter paramedic, in recognition and sincere gratitude for your diligent efforts, personal initiative, and expedient assistance which directly resulted in saving the life of 55-year-old boat captain Craig DeWitt after a bull shark attack on January 21st, 2017, near Boot Reef, north of Queensland, Australia. The Los Angeles Fire Department commends you for your extraordinary life-saving efforts to a citizen of Brisbane, Australia. Presented this 15th day of August, 2017, Ralph M. Terrazas, Fire Chief. Now, I'd like to read a few of the beautiful words of thanks that Camilla and Craig expressed to Christopher for saving his life. But I won't, in the interest of time. And the reason being is because Craig and Camilla are here. They flew from Queensland, Australia to thank him in person. Craig, Camilla, would you please join us?
Hi, everybody. On behalf of my wife, Camilla, and myself, when we heard about this recognition for Christopher, we were in Papua New Guinea, and we felt that the least we could do was to come here to Los Angeles and personally thank Christopher and to honour him, as well as the Los Angeles Fire Department, for having him. For sure, without the first aid response from Chris, I would not be here today. So it's my life, and obviously my wife are very happy to be here, to be standing in front of you all today to thank you all. So thank you very much.
I don't know what to say about that. In the drill tower, we train our people on a lot of different things. I think the first aid skills, and Chris is a paramedic, no doubt that helped. But we don't train them how to respond to shark attacks near Australia. We'll have to add that to the curriculum. Chief Rideout, would you jump on that? But when I heard the description of this event, I was amazed of Chris's ability under pressure and the outcome. As you can see, Craig wouldn't be here had he not done what he did. So I always, our mission is to protect lives and property. We don't really put a frame on that. No matter where or who or what, our mission is to protect lives and property. And Chris, on his vacation near Australia, he had an opportunity to save a life. And he stepped up and displayed his skills. And to join in honoring, I think it's pretty amazing, and that not only is Craig and Camilla here, but we have this entire Task Force 89 here to recognize Chris. So Chris, we're extremely proud of you, to have you as a member of the LAFD, and this experience is under consideration right now for a Medal of Valor. We don't know the outcome yet, but we're very proud of you, of what you did, what you accomplished. Congratulations. Chris is a man of few words, so we're going to go take a picture.
We're going to have 89s also join them up there.
Okay.
Do you move the consent or just go straight to the...
Yeah, move to consent agenda items.
Okay, move items 4A through E, and also I'm going to add 5A unless there's any dissent from that.
No, you can move 5A.
Okay.
I second.
All in favor?
Aye.
So 5B is verbal report by the department and the quarterly bureau status report by Emergency Medical Services Bureau.
Thank you. Good morning again. Dr. Mark Eckstein, Medical Director and EMS Bureau Commander. This is our first report on the relatively new EMS Bureau. We're a little over a year old. And this is just a brief discussion of some of our accomplishments, who we are, and what we're about. So our mission is to provide timely, quality, consistent, and compassionate pre-hospital care. And due to Chief Terrazas' leadership, we now have a bureau with a singular focus. Since we're an all-hazards department and EMS has gotten incredibly complex and now takes on the overwhelming majority of our emergency workload, the need for oversight in EMS has never been greater. The changing demand in EMS is not just due to an increased number of incidents. There's also a change in the type of incidents. We're seeing a virtual explosion of the low acuity incidents in terms of the burgeoning homeless population, the increased use of EMS by so-called EMS super users, the increase in the low acuity patients who have minor illnesses or injuries, and also the increase in number of patients with primarily mental health issues or mental health crises. In trying to develop a more appropriate response to these changing EMS demands, we've had a number of successes in the EMS Bureau in terms of innovative solutions. One of the first things we did when we sat down with Chief Terrazas and command staff when we made the org chart was we came up with a public health unit. And it may be a little bit of a non sequitur to think, why would there be a public health unit in the fire department? But a lot of the issues that we're grappling with right now really fall within the realm of public health. And our traditional response model in terms of rapid response to resuscitate, stabilize, and transport the severely ill and injured really is not a good fit for the increase in patients really who have a public health issue. So along the lines of a public health model, we've developed non-traditional response units. Some of these include our fast response vehicles, the creation and placement of advanced EMS advanced providers in the field, which are nurse practitioners and physician's assistants, and also the creation and refinement of our tiered dispatch system. This is a picture of the current org chart of the EMS Bureau, getting larger by the day, it seems, as our need becomes greater. And there you see the public health unit in the corner. That's run by Captain Miguel Escobedo, who we have in the back. Miguel, if you want to stand up real briefly. He's had a very difficult job and done an incredible job this year managing really transformative solutions to the myriad problems facing the city and the fire department. In terms of other leadership of the EMS Bureau, Chief Corey Rose, Assistant Chief, is out at a brush fire as part of the incident management team. We have Battalion Chief Ellsworth Fortman, who's here, who a 30-year senior member of the department who brings an incredible breadth of operational administrative experience to the table, oversees EMS operations, including our EMS captains. We have Battalion Chief Jim Ruiz, who I've had the pleasure of working with for quite a long time since he worked in Emergency Services Bureau as a Captain 2. Also brings a wealth of experience to the table. He oversees administrative and training operations for the EMS Bureau. And my colleague, Dr. Steve Sanko, who's our Assistant Medical Director, who provides immeasurable help to oversee our innovative solutions in the public health realm. And also we have Dr. Saman Kashani, who's our EMS Fellow this year. As we have now become a national leader in EMS, we have physicians who want to pursue EMS as a career. Dr. Kashani is our latest EMS Fellow, just finished residency and is refining his expertise in the EMS. In terms of our Advanced Provider Response Unit, as everybody here I'm sure is aware, this was initially rolled out as our Nurse Practitioner Response Unit, which was really an innovative approach to deal with the changing types of EMS demands. The team consisted of a firefighter paramedic and what's now called an EMS advanced provider, which was at the time a nurse practitioner. And they carried a variety of advanced equipment for advanced diagnostics, evaluation, and treatment on scene. This was successful due to a collaboration between internal stakeholders, labor, the electeds, the mayor, as well as the media and public at large. The Advanced Provider Response Unit really is an innovative type of approach to deal with these evolving EMS demand, primarily responds to low acuity patients to basically perform treat and release to get us out of the habit of transporting low acuity patients unnecessarily by ambulance to an emergency department. They also provide scheduled visits to our EMS super users to get these vulnerable adults plugged in to help them navigate the healthcare system, get them followed up to deal with their chronic, better manage their chronic medical conditions, psychiatric issues, substance abuse issues, and really finally sever their reliance on the 911 system to manage their daily needs. The APRU also performs medical clearance on scene of patients with mental health crises. As you may recall, several months ago, I made a presentation on the mental health issues confronting our department. We dispatch over 20,000 emergency resources annually to patients whose primary complaint is mental health. And these patients have to be transported to the local emergency department or nearest emergency department, which obviously tides up our scarce resources and also doesn't provide these individuals with the psychiatric help they need. The APRU performs medical clearance on scene and then transport these individuals to a psychiatric urgent care facility or Exodus facility where they receive basically emergency mental health evaluation within about 20 minutes and obviously frees up our emergency resources to respond to the next incident. One of the newer missions of the APRU is also respond to the serial and chronic inebriates. And rather than the old mantra of transporting these individuals to the nearest emergency department, where they basically get sober and hit the streets again at an incredible cost to not only society, but also tying up our resources and contributing to wall time, the APRU can also perform medical clearance on these individuals and now transport them to the first sobering center, which is open in the downtown area. So this is really a transformative resource that we're looking forward to scaling up. And the way we're going to expand the number of APRUs is we're being good stewards of limited tax dollars. So we've entered into a number of private-public collaborations and partnerships. We've had meetings with the large healthcare agencies across the city. Cedars-Sinai was the first organization to step up. And what they've done, as well as Kaiser and now Dignity Health after them, is they provide funding to cover the cost of the EMS advanced provider. The city pays for the cost of the firefighter, paramedic, and the rig and the equipment. And we're able to rapidly expand the number of advanced provider response units. City Council today is going to hopefully approve the EMS advanced provider as a new civil service job classification. And we expect to have upwards of 8 or so APRUs in the field by early 2018. So we're very, very excited about that. These units will decrease the workload of our members, particularly with calls for which they don't have a good solution, the types of patients I mentioned. And it provides a much better service to these vulnerable adults throughout the city who are increasing in number. We also are working on implementing a brand new EMS enhancement plan for the airport. The airport is a very unique entity within the city. It has the lowest transportation rate of anywhere in the city of Los Angeles. And we currently send heavy apparatus and paramedics through the increasing gridlock around LAX, only to have the patient not need or not want to go to the hospital. So we're finalizing a plan to place paramedic and EMT cycle teams supported by an advanced provider response unit in the terminals at LAX. And that's also going to be a paradigm shift for the way we deliver EMS and free up Battalion 4 resources. And we expect to implement the LAWA EMS enhancement plan probably in early October of this year. One of our newest innovative projects in the public health realm is our SOBER unit. SOBER is an acronym, stands for Sobriety Emergency Response Unit. And any paramedic or EMT in the field will tell you they go on some of these EMS super users who tend to be chronic inebriates, sometimes multiple times per shift, and these patients don't get any definitive care, and they tie up our scarce resources. Again, with seed money through the Mayor's Innovation Fund, which is the same way we started up some of these other resources, the SOBER unit, which we anticipate implementing also in early October. The current plan is also a collaboration between Exodus and the city. Exodus, as I mentioned, runs the mental health walk-in clinics and also the sobering center. They work under the auspices of DHS. And Exodus, we're working on the final legalities, but we anticipate Exodus will be able to provide the nurse practitioner and a case manager in kind to the city, and they will provide the firefighter paramedic. And the mission of the SOBER unit will be to evaluate, medically clear, and transport the public and chronic inebriates to the sobering center to allow them to get sober, get into detox, and get them into transitional housing and get them off the streets and get their lives together. Again, this also represents a paradigm shift for one of the more challenging types of patients that our members run on all the time. Fast Response Vehicle was our first innovative project that was largely funded through the Mayor's Innovation Fund. This was a new response model for us where we have a very rapid mobile unit staffed by a firefighter paramedic partnered with a firefighter EMT. And they basically perform rapid on-scene triage, medical treatment, and call for the appropriate resources to minimize the unnecessary dispatching and overuse of resources. This unit has been very, very efficient. They've freed up a number of our resources, improved triage, and have been documented to have a number of saves. We currently have 2 fast response vehicles, one covering the Sylmar area, Fire Station 91, which, as you know, is a vast area the size of the city of Burbank that only has an engine and rescue right now. So the FRV up there is making a huge impact. And we also have another FRV covering Fire Station 9 due to the inordinate call load in the Skid Row area of downtown LA. And again, the fast response vehicle has been very, very effective. I mentioned the LAFD tiered dispatch system, which also is in the EMS Bureau. We implemented that in December of 2014. And one of the appealing things of the TDS system, this was created internally, and we constantly are evaluating the data based on our dispatch QI metrics, feedback from the field, EPCR review, and medical oversight. And this has been shown statistically through careful analysis to have saved lives. We've decreased call processing times for our most critical calls by 25%. We've increased the rate of dispatcher-assisted CPR from about 33% to almost 90%. And consequently, our save rate has gone up as well. We also have significantly decreased the number of resources we dispatch per incident. And to really crystallize that fact, analysis run by our Dispatch Quality Improvement Unit showed without our new dispatch system and our evolving dispatch algorithms, we would have dispatched an additional 35,000 resources last year to the same incident had we not refined our dispatch system. So as busy as our members are in the field, it's likely we would be able to barely meet the demand without this evolving dispatch system. We make quarterly changes to the system, and we're constantly refining the system to decrease over triage and make sure we have minimal to no under triage. The system is working extremely well. It's been embraced by our dispatchers. And again, the feedback from the field and from our metrics enable us to continually improve our dispatch system. Finally, one of our latest and greatest innovative projects, as if all those weren't enough, is to create what's called a no-send category, meaning we have an APRU, and we'll have more APRUs in the field to treat and release on scene. We're working to take that a step further, and we're in the final stages of placing 2 EMS advanced providers at dispatch. This also, the initial funding also was provided by the Mayor's Innovation Fund. And basically, we intend to launch this also by October or November of this year. And the advanced providers will, instead of dispatchers who will initially develop the incident, when the call is a low acuity call that would normally be dispatched non-emergency, instead the call will be transferred to an advanced provider. The advanced provider will go through a much more thorough interrogation of the caller and see if they could safely not send any LAFD resources. They'll be able to text them medical information for follow-up, refer them to clinics, or dispatch a taxi cab if they need a ride to a clinic or emergency department. We're very, very excited about the implication of the APs at MFC. And again, it's our first time we'll be able to safely evaluate the safety and efficacy of developing a no-send category, because anyone in the field can tell you there are a number of calls that we go on that we have no business going on, but we have to be able to do that safely and make sure we don't compromise public safety. So having an EMS advanced providers do a much more thorough interrogation of the call will have a huge impact on our mission and our department and availability of emergency resources. This is yet another project that many other EMS providers around the state and around the nation are looking at us to emulate and to follow our model. And as we have metrics on these, we're going to be publishing the data. In terms of external oversight, largely through the efforts of Dr. Sanko, we received over $250,000 funding from the Keck Foundation for grant funding to do a very comprehensive analysis of the impact of our advanced provider response unit. Through the efforts of my EMS fellow, Dr. Kashani, we've received a $10,000 grant to evaluate the safety, efficacy, and patient satisfaction of the APs at MFC project. So these projects are not just successful because we say so, but we're also making sure they have external validation in the medical peer review literature. We're also in the final stages of entering a collaboration with UCLA to develop the first mobile stroke unit anywhere in California. And basically, this is going to be a highly advanced unit that'll have a portable CT scanner, a critical care nurse, and a CT tech, and one of our firefighter paramedics. And a neurologist will be available through telemedicine. They'll perform a detailed neurologic evaluation of a suspected stroke patient. They'll be able to perform diagnostics with a CT scan in the ambulance, then initiate potential life and brain-saving therapy with thrombolytics in the ambulance, and then take the patient to definitive care to a comprehensive stroke center. And we're very excited about this upcoming collaboration. One of the other things we've done in the EMS Bureau is EMS captains have been challenged with having to provide controlled medications to our paramedics. And given the regulations, we haven't been able to provide those, so they've had to go to pharmacies, outpatient pharmacies at county hospitals, which is taking an inordinate amount of their time. They have to go down to up to Olive or down to Harbor-UCLA or USC. Now we've fully implemented what's called a Pyxis system. These are automated drug dispensing machines. We have 5 of these strategically placed throughout the city in fire stations. We're now EMS captains with the assistance of a part-time pharmacist will provide and restock controlled medications to our members, which significantly decreases on the busy work that our EMS captains were having to do by driving to county pharmacies. We've also reached out to our partners in UFLAC and labor. We have ongoing meetings with UFLAC with an EMS work group to talk about EMS issues, ideas, and challenges and solutions. And it became very obvious to my team and myself that our proposed solutions to the myriad of challenges facing our department, that we agree on many more than we disagree. And these meetings with labor have been very, very fruitful, and a number of recommendations have been approved and acted upon by the fire chief. In terms of addressing some other public safety concerns, I'm sure everybody here is aware of the what's now considered a epidemic in this country, the number of Americans who are dying from opiate overdoses. And this is not just unique to the Skid Row area. It afflicts people of all races, creeds, ages, and socioeconomic ranks. And to decrease the rate of death and disability from opiate overdoses, we're going to be the first department, probably in the state, to provide a nasal Narcan spray to our EMTs. This was formerly a drug which reverses the effect of opiate overdoses. It used to be only limited to paramedic scope of practice. The state approved it as an optional scope of practice on July 1st. We've purchased this new medication, and our EMTs will be trained on this next month. And we're very excited about having this new life-saving antidote on every single rig in the city, both ALS and BLS. As we know, 5 to 6 minutes without oxygen when someone overdoses, we're talking about irreversible brain damage. So we're looking forward to helping to decrease the toll being taken by this scourge of opiate overdoses. I mentioned the LAWA EMS enhancement plan. EMS training, we now have decentralized training. We hired 1 EMS educator. We have 1 per geographic bureau. So these educators are closely aligned with the chain of command in each geographic bureau. They get to know the strengths and weaknesses and unique challenges in each of those geographic bureaus. And the focus on EMS training is the lessons learned from real incidents. EMS surge plan was developed in the EMS Bureau with a collaboration of Metro Fire Communications and EOPS. As we know, there's ebb and flow to our EMS demand. And we basically have worked with our CAD support group and our partners at MFC to automate this as much as possible, leave as little to human error as possible. We now have thresholds based on color-coded maps and real-time information available to our floor captains and our resource controllers at MFC. And these individuals know when we get below critical thresholds around the city, citywide, and within each geographic bureau. And we have a decision matrix which the MFC and the ops can go through to minimize the adverse impact on our response times when we get below these critical thresholds of rescues around the city. We also now have incorporated both our Ready Reserve ambulances and our variably staffed BLS ambulances to help mitigate the adverse impact when the surge plan when the EMS demand broaches critical thresholds as part of our surge plan. In summary, the EMS Bureau, we're about 15 months old. We're trying to tackle many, many problems that are confronting our EMS operation in the city, not the least of which is the number of vacancies. As you know, the city had not hired for 5 years, so we're working very, very closely with Chief Terrazas, EOPS, and labor to come up with solutions to decrease the staffing and details, which you know is a terrible impact on morale in the field. We've continued to refine our dispatch system. Our creation of the public health unit is really creating a paradigm shift in the way we deal with increasing demand for really a subset of patients for which EMS was never designed for. Our members are expert at resuscitation and stabilization, but dealing with patients with mental health crises and chronic medical problems is really not what they're trained to do. So we're trying to come up with innovative solutions to deal with that growing demand and therefore free up our resources. And we want to keep our focus on providing quality, compassionate, and efficient patient care. And I'm happy to entertain any questions. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, well, thank you for the informative presentation. First, I think it's definitely worth recognizing the fact that we have an EMS bureau and the leadership that around creating the bureau. I think it's I don't know if everyone knows, but with roughly 89% of our dispatches being related to EMS, this is the most significant aspect of the work we do. So it makes perfect sense that we would have a bureau dedicated to this. So I'm very appreciative that this department has the leadership to with the foresight to see that and create that. So, and clearly the result of that is that we are trying out some new and innovative stuff. I think that's great. I just want to, you kind of went through things relatively quickly. If I could just ask that we revisit at a future date in the not too distant future, do a deeper dive into some of the innovations that you're undertaking here. The APRU, for example, we have that's been running. The FRV, looking at revisiting what are the goals for each of those innovations. And to the extent that we have metrics, how are we doing against those goals? I think innovations are great. Pilot programs are great. I think, though, that it is also important that they show success. And then if they show success, we should invest further in them. But if they don't show success, then we try something different. I'm looking forward to those coming into the future. When does that LAX program go into effect?
Assuming the EMS advanced provider position is passed council this morning, and then personnel has to advertise and hire, we're anticipating sometime in October to implement that program.
Okay. And the stroke unit, when is that going to happen?
We are just finalizing issues in terms of legal issues. I would anticipate by the end of the calendar year.
Okay, that's exciting. Will that be an actual LAFD branded unit, or will it have the UCLA brand on there?
Good question. The Board of Supervisors passed a motion where they want to have this. Initially, this unit was 100% funded through private donations. The LA County Board of Supervisors passed a motion to put forth some of the taxpayer dollars, I believe, through Measure B funding to expand the program. So now it's a 30-month pilot, and Supervisor Hahn also wants it in the South Bay and San Pedro area of the city. So the latest permutation, it'll be a UCLA mobile stroke unit, and it'll have the provider agencies that are participating on the rig. I anticipate we'll be one of several provider agencies that will provide staffing and whose jurisdictions that unit will serve.
Okay. Also, perhaps for the future, I think a number of us are interested in how we will, if we will benefit from Measure H. That's the county homeless measure, and to see if that's something that we might benefit from, and and what we may be able to do to try to access some of that future funding to increase our ability to provide services to some of our super users in the homeless community. Okay, a couple other when you talked about the advanced practitioner at Metro. One of my ongoing questions is, and even for our APs, ours use is, what's our follow-up for the low acuity callers? I know sometimes we refer them to patients, partners in care, but I am also interested in us continuing to explore the idea of partnering with insurance companies to help them think about different, more efficient ways to access medical services than calling 911. So put that in the hopper as well as something for us to talk about when we get there with those things. Generally, moving into our more run-of-the-mill EMS operations, our current paramedic vacancies, you mentioned detailing and that's difficult for lots of reasons. So what is our current vacancy rate, and how do you see that vacancy rate decreasing, and what are the tactics we have to do that?
So we've worked very closely with Chief Terrazas and Chief Poirier, as well as labor, to address this issue. And we've done several timely interventions to minimize the adverse impact of the number of details. We have 72 paramedic vacancies currently. That'll be down to 65 by September. Some of the things we've already implemented to decrease the number of details. It used to be that a new recruit, once he or she got off probation, had to have 18 months before if they were already a paramedic, to be eligible to do their 10-shift ride-along and be transferred to a paramedic rescue ambulance. We decreased that to 12 months, and we now have placed 36 of our newer firefighter paramedics on paramedic ambulances, and they've filled the vacancies on the busiest rescues in the city. So that's 36 new paramedics in the field since July 1 through today. We also solicited voluntary details from firefighter paramedics to be detailed to vacant spots on paramedic ambulances for a period of 3 to 6 months. And we had about 26 members who also signed up for that to help further decrease the number of vacancies. We also allow rated members who are paramedics to work overtime on vacant paramedic spots on assessment companies. And we also traditionally have had 15 seats at the UCLA Freeman Paramedic School where we send our firefighters. And we increased that and got the funding to increase it from 15 to 25. We were a little bit unsure if we would be able to get 25 of our members, our firefighters, to sign up for paramedic school starting in September. I'm pleased to say not only have all 25 seats been filled, we actually have 27, and we got funding for the 2 more. So we currently have 27 firefighters who will be beginning paramedic school next month. So those are the most timely solutions, at least interim solutions, that we've implemented in collaboration to decrease the number of details. I believe we have a handout that Captain Conroy, who's recently was promoted from the EMS QI unit, wrote staffing projections. Again, these are projections. There's a lot of variables that could change, but based on our best intel we have, we anticipate that the number of paramedic vacancies will continue to decline, and we should have minimal to no vacancies by end of next spring. At that point, we'll be able to sit with the fire chief and other command staff members to determine best deployment models, where to open up additional ALS resources, whether it be paramedic ambulances, increase the number of assessment engines, increasing number of rotational houses. I think it is safe to say the worst is behind us. The numbers are reflecting that based on these solutions that we've implemented this summer. We certainly realize that our paramedics have really stepped up, and it's been very, very difficult with the inordinate number of details and assigned hires. But I think now we're catching up as quickly as we can, and based on all our modeling, by the end of next spring, we're going to be a situation where we're looking at almost a paramedic pool, let alone 100 some odd paramedic vacancies, which will then give us the ability, when we sit down with the fire chief and command staff, to come up with our 3 to 5 year EMS plan in the end of winter and spring of next year. We'll have the staffing to support it. Even if we got funding for additional ALS resources right now, we don't have the staffing to support them. So I think we're already in a much better position than we were only 3 months ago. And I think by all our estimates, that will continue to improve.
And when we take somebody somebody on probation, normally they would be practicing to learn their firefighting skills, but their paramedic skills would actually kind of perhaps go stale, because actually wouldn't be allowed to use those skills. So I understand the rationale saying, well, after 12 months, they should be able to serve as paramedic. However, is it possible they could be assigned after 12 months to a non-rotational paramedic ambulance?
Certainly.
Yeah. So I do think that raises some interesting safety questions. Is if you have somebody who is supposed to be a firefighter and a paramedic, and they have received only 12 months of probation as a firefighter, and then we're moving them to a non-rotational unit for an indefinite period of time, I have concerns that they may become at risk for safety because they actually have no time to drill either as a firefighter. So I would just suggest that we consider what the safety implications are there and consider whether or not those individuals should be placed only in rotational assignments rather than in non-rotational assignments. But this also begs a larger question here, which is, it has been our department's stated goal that we are going to have all units as rotation, all frontline fire suppression units as rotational. How many of our units are not rotational right now?
We currently have 28 paramedic ambulances that are non-rotational. With the voluntary details that we just implemented, now we have 37.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of the ability to rotate, the firefighter paramedic has to have a requisite minimum number of patient contacts based on acuity to be eligible to rotate.
Makes sense.
Based on the fact these individuals are put at the busiest rescues in the city, some of these members are eligible now after 6 months. So we make it metric-based, not based on time in the field, which much is a more accurate reflection of their experience. And clearly, I recognize, and everybody else does here, there's competing priorities. So we obviously want members to be safe. We have a need for them to use the paramedic skills and fill vacancies on the paramedic side. And hopefully the station commanders take that into account in terms of drilling and practicing both skills. But it's obvious these are challenging to get on-the-job training on the fire suppression side and also filling the need and be able to use their paramedic skills.
Yeah, I recognize we're stuck between a rock and a hard place right now on this one. If we're saying, so we have 28 members, or 28 ambulances, or 37 now that are non-rotational. So that is roughly 75 to 80 positions that are non-rotational positions, which presumably means we've got approximately 50 to 70 fire suppression resources that are not assessment. Is that math right?
We have 50, yeah, correct. We have 55 fire suppression resources that are BLS only, and the remainder are assessment.
Yeah. Okay. So I do believe that it should be our department policy that a stated departmental goal that we are moving to all fire suppression units as being as being assessment, and further that if anybody is trained as a firefighter paramedic, and we have invested in both of those skill sets, that those individuals must rotate, and if they're not rotating, then we're not getting the full return on the investment of training them as a firefighter. So to that end, I think that we and we've talked about this rotational idea for a long time. I think it was Bamatri that came up with this in the mid '90s, and I think there is wisdom in having a paramedic on all of our resources, and certainly from a firefighter paramedic training standpoint, from a morale standpoint, from a return on investment standpoint. We've got to have a plan to get there, and as my understanding is right now, we don't actually have a plan to get there. So what I would like to do is actually request that you develop, or it can be delegated, but that the department develop a report that analyzes options for achieving the following departmental goals by January 1st of 2020, which is that all engines and light forces are staffed as assessment resources, and that all frontline paramedic firefighter positions are rotational. And I would like to see that by November 7th. And while multiple approaches can and should be analyzed, at minimum, I'm asking that the report include a detailed analysis of the deployment of a permanent sworn single-function paramedic position within our department that would offer the option to cross-train as a firefighter paramedic if vacancies allow after a minimum of 3 to 5 years of service, but we would never require these members to do so. So that would differ from the prior EAP program, the emergency appointment paramedic program that we had.
Okay, just to be clear, what are we doing now?
I'm requesting a report.
You're requesting a report.
Yes, and I'm here.
Thank you.
Yes, I have copies if you guys would like to see what I'm requesting. Pass this
Sure.
down. So the analysis for the cost of single-function paramedics should assume the all-in compensation would be equalized to that of a firefighter EMT, and at minimum, a configuration, I'd like to see an analysis of a configuration of one single-function paramedic paired with one paramedic firefighter, who would be rotational, and looking at a minimum of 75, but no more than 150 positions, whatever is necessary to achieve this goal of a fully assessment department, fully rotational department for our paramedic firefighters by January 1st, 2020. And I would like to see a cost, benefit, and risk analysis of each approach, as well as comparative costs. So, for example, what is the fully loaded cost of sending a firefighter who is not cross-trained to paramedic school?
The cost is about $11,000 for tuition and probably about $90,000 to hire behind.
And which portion of that cost is covered by general fund, our general fund, and what part is covered by grant funding?
I think the majority is out of our budget.
Okay, so we're spending roughly I've heard higher estimates, more like $150,000 actually in cost to send somebody to paramedic school when you actually do the full hire behind. So just to be clear, when we look at our vacancy report here, and we're talking about paramedic vacancies, and we're sending 25 members to paramedic school, that is a cost of between $2.5 and $3.5 million that we're spending to cross-train members. I point that out simply to say that if we were to consider other options for acquiring paramedics, that savings could be applied to more resources that could be staffed on an annual basis. So I'd love to see that considered as part of the report, is what the cost comparisons are there as you guys think about developing the report.
Okay, so this is actually pretty detailed
Mm-hmm.
as to what you would like. So I'd actually like an opportunity to meet with the medical director and discuss this, and actually with the fire chief. So we'll do that, and then we'll come back and we'll do a report on this, and we'll schedule it.
Madam President?
Yes.
I actually support Commissioner Glazer's request and the comments that he's made today. From my experiences in visiting in the field with people who do the work, there are many concerns about not having the opportunity to do their firefighter service work, and also being put into a paramedic position and not being able to get out, not even having the opportunity to sometimes just do the exercise, the training, and the drilling because they're so busy, which I understand at this moment we're short. And so I understand their concerns, but I'm just relaying concerns that I've heard that supports that report, the request or the discussion. And many, I've met them everywhere, from stations to hospitals to everywhere. This is a big concern of paramedics.
Absolutely.
And so I certainly support the request that he's making, in that it would probably help us all to begin to start looking at what's happening with the paramedics to try to support the paramedics we have and to increase the morale among the paramedics, because at this moment it's really very low.
Could I comment, Madam President? Are you done, Commissioner? I don't want to cut you off.
Oh, but I just wanted to make sure that I provided support for what the Commissioner is explaining, because I've actually have it's experiential, and I've talked to the paramedics and I've talked to the firefighters, and I know what's happening in the field, and so I know that I would just like to share that experience. Sure. That it's actually something that I believe that he is bringing up that is worth us looking at. And I don't know how many, I don't know about the meeting, but I think that they actually need to look at it. He has it already written out. I'm not sure what else discussion we would have to have.
Okay, before we go to Fire Chief, I just want to make sure that you understand it's just a request for report.
Right, that's what I'm supporting his request.
That's fine. Fire Chief?
First of all, the EMS Bureau has done great work. I want to make sure that we don't lose sight of everything that has happened in the last really 3 years When we created this EMS Bureau, we started with the rough outline of an org chart. And as you saw in the presentation, it became bigger than I had anticipated, but it was really truly needed, and they've done some amazing work. But to the point at hand about a report, the board should take into consideration that we have already begun the initial phases of an EMS strategic plan. And through that strategic plan, much like the technology strategic plan, we want to look at all these issues very carefully and use metrics and hiring data to figure out the timeline to expand our rotational fire stations and to do it all the right way. It's going to take a little time. I agree that they're important issues, and I don't want to rush into any rapid decisions without doing the staff work that's necessary. So we've begun the initial planning for a new department strategic plan, which will take effect in January of next year. And part of the department strategic plan will be an EMS strategic plan within our goal number 1. Now getting to the point about not being able to rotate, it was competing priorities, like Dr. Eckstein said. We had a choice to make. And the choice was that we would rotate, or we'd put these new hires into the paramedic vacancies at the 1-year mark versus the 18-month mark. It's our goal is to eventually create rotational assignments throughout the department. And we're targeting engines first that are not ALS, and those stations that are only light force. I want to narrow down the number. But by applying the metrics in terms of the report in front of you towards our annual budgets, we can calculate how long it'll take for us to get there. So I just want to put that on your plate to think about as a consideration as you make this decision.
You mean the chart?
Yes, the staffing chart, the staffing projection.
Well, okay.
So to be clear, no decisions are being made today. We don't have a report to make a decision about. What I think is important to note is that we have talked about being rotational, and that's a goal, and we have never had a plan to achieve assessment status and rotational status by any sort of set date, nor has this commission had an opportunity to consider what the cost implications are of various approaches. So that is all that I am asking for, is that we have an opportunity as a commission to have a look at what the potential options are and consider the costs and benefits of each one, and then make a decision, as is our duty, to set goals for the department and priorities, and then decide how we want to approach it. But I think unless we have a detailed conversation about what the options are, I do not believe we will ever achieve a status of being fully that assessment priority that we want to get to and being fully rotational, which I think is very much connected to the mission of the EMS Bureau. In terms of what our service delivery looks like. So that's why I'm asking for this. If you would like to discuss it further in terms of what the timeline looks like, that's fine. I'm happy to have that discussion. So we can certainly revisit it. But whatever happens, I am asking that this commission get the report so that we may consider the options. And we may land on an option that is totally different than anything any of us have ever thought of, and that's fine. If the result of that is that we have a target date, and I think 2020 is not a bad date to try to achieve this by. So that's what I'm asking for the report to consider that, because again, let's be clear, this is not a decision. This is just a request for a report.
Sure. So I think that this division, because it's new, it's been most open to sort of innovative approaches. So, and that's credit to the medical director for a lot of his work, and to the fire chief.
Absolutely, no criticism is implied.
Absolutely, there's definitely a crisis in the field with regards to paramedics and regards to their workload, and they have every right to sort of be part of this conversation. None of us are paramedics. So we're going to have that conversation with their input. So we'll do that, and we'll have a meeting, and we'll talk about it, and then we'll come back to the report.
Just to be clear, I am not suggesting that this be done without anybody's input.
Oh, of course.
So that I'm suggesting this be a true collaboration between the commission and the department to figure out what the right decision is. So absolutely, they should be providing their input on what the various options
Right, so
are.
that's going to take some work by the medical director to meet with all the right stakeholders.
I understand, and I would expect that to be the case. You mentioned the surge in your presentation. I'm curious, how since that surge plan was developed, how often have we had to activate the surge plan?
We're working out the software right now. The plan has been approved. The software is improved in terms of the screens available to leadership at MFC. It basically is a trigger for the chief officers at MFC and the floor captains to determine what's going on and then look at the duration and determine what steps to take. EOPS and the GO Bureau commanders and DDC is aware as well. But keep in mind, we may dip below a threshold of 20, 30, or 40% rescue ambulance availability in one part of the city. That may be for 5 or 10 minutes. So it's simply a trigger to look at the big picture, gain situational awareness, and come up with solutions. I don't have how often we go below each of those 3 pre-established thresholds. Mm-hmm. It's not uncommon that we do. The issue is for what duration.
And you mentioned they're trying to limit human error and trying to kind of automate some of those things. But I think what I hear you saying is that software is actually not ready yet to do that.
Correct. It's getting there. So they do have the screen available, a total command screen at MFC, which the BCs, AC, and the floor captain and the dispatch resource controllers can see. It has ongoing and real-time updates of the number and percent of ambulances available citywide and broken down by geographic bureau. And that situational awareness then leads leadership and MFC and EOPS to make decisions if and when to activate various parts of the surge plan.
And does this replace degraded mode, what we used to call it?
Degraded mode is one of the parts of the solution or remedies or mitigating steps to the surge plan. So, for example, one of the ways to mitigate certain aspects of limited resource availability or rescue ambulance availability is paramedic rescue ambulances are not dispatched to reported structure fires when a certain threshold is broached. So that's just one aspect of the surge plan to increase availability of scarce paramedic ambulances.
Okay, and presumably we will increase our sophistication in the ability to keep track of how often we are required to implement aspects of the surge plan. That does tell us some important things about what our capacity is to respond to EMS calls.
Right. I think also the integration of AVL, automatic vehicle locators, will help as well. Mm-hmm. But our CAD support group is working closely with other stakeholders to have the software such that real-time situational awareness is made available to decision makers 24/7, and then ask the questions and then see what aspects of the surge plan they need to implement to mitigate any adverse effects. Again, keep in mind that when there's a difficult breather and most fire stations in the city is that engine and ambulance rolls, there's nobody left behind in that district. So that district turns red on the map. Sure. That engine may become available in 7 or 10 minutes. The issue is when multiple contiguous districts become unavailable or when we get below the certain predetermined thresholds for the surge plan, looking at the status of each resource to estimate the duration they're unavailable and then determine what aspects of the surge to implement.
Okay. I have additional questions, but I'll yield to my colleagues in case they have others.
Yeah, as one health professional on the commission, I really want to commend Dr. Eckstein. I mean, you've done a phenomenal job in a number of different areas. And, you know, as a health professional, again, the whole idea of quality metrics that you are currently capturing, I think is critically important. And in terms of surge, I'm actually on the surge committee for the county. And I would submit that you are far ahead of where the county is right now in terms of a surge plan. So once again, I don't have a problem with a report as you've requested. But on the other hand, you know, putting everything in perspective, once again, with the advanced provider units, the relationship, and it sounds like the stroke unit is actually, the county is also involved in that if Janice Hahn is, you know, putting in a request. So therefore, Once again, I think you've collaborated wonderfully with Cedars-Sinai, Kaiser Permanente, Divinity, all of the different organizations, and to that extent, I have nothing but congratulations for the great work that you've already accomplished, and I look forward to your, to hearing in the future, what else you have in mind and what other, and once again, a lot of the innovations that the mayor has awarded have been specifically to ideas that you've come up with.
Well, thank you. I have a great team. Thank you very much.
Yes.
Thank you.
In asking for other and specific items doesn't take anything away from the work that you've done. The good doctor, has done a lot of great work, and as I've stated in the past, I've noticed the energy that it gave to him, because he at one time seemed like he was a little on the downs, but now he's always smiling, he's happy, he comes up with, the ideas are so, I was kind of getting tired as you were running through that report.
Well, he's the bureau chief now for this. So.
As a matter of fact, I'd like to have a copy of the PowerPoint if I could, because I could go back and kind of look at it and have probably some more questions about some of the things that you were rolling through there. I know it's just like right off the top of your head for you, because you've been there while it was happening. So I'm really happy about that. That these things are happening, and everything that you've created, there's a need for it. But we just have another need in this paramedic area that I'm sure you're aware of, and I mean everybody's aware of it, but it just needs to have something done about it. And I think Supervisor Hahn is clearly on the right track in requesting something for that San Pedro Harbor area, because when you look at that red map that you're talking, the maps that turn red, green, and yellow, blue, it's a disconnect from the rest of the city, and they need somebody down there, because when it turns red down there, to get somebody else from the rest of the city, you'll have to explain to me how the surge works on this ambulance thing, because I know they can get to places when they are needed, but if it takes 10 minutes, that's an issue. I've seen surge in the Metro Center, but the dispatchers are already there, so when they need them, they just all rush out. So, but I'm not clear on how it works with the ambulances. I'd like to have more discussion on that. But I appreciate the work, and I'm looking forward to hearing more about what we can do to help with the paramedic situation.
Thank you.
Actually, I'd also like a copy of the PowerPoint, because next Tuesday the county search committee is meeting, and I'd like to share with them, what the city is doing, which is, miles ahead of what the county's doing.
Yeah.
Certainly.
So just to be clear, I'm in favor of having a report. I just don't think we, as a commission at this point, can direct to you what that report should have or what specific strategy we need to employ. Because obviously, you're the expert, and the department has the necessary expertise to sort of come up with your own plan about how you feel we should address the specific crisis with, basically it's a call load, right? Is that how would you describe it? What's the crisis that we're facing right now?
Call load's one aspect. It's the changing nature of the call load, and the fact we haven't hired in 5 years, but people have continued to retire.
That's the biggest problem.
Population in the city is going up. We're getting more dense with dense urban housing. Again, there's a burgeoning increase in the low acuity calls. So there's not a week that goes by where Chief Terrazas, myself, Chief Poyer, and other leadership in the department don't talk about the paramedic issues. The chief was putting a number of portal messages out there. We've talked to our partners in labor. We've spoken to people in the field. We're keenly aware of the details of sign hires, workload issues. Everything we're working on collaboratively in the EMS Bureau and department leadership is to address how do we deal with the workload, how do we deal with the need for our members to rotate to maintain their fire suppression skills and their life-saving paramedic skills. And we're coming up with solutions very, very quickly based on the fact we hadn't hired in 5 years. So we've made, I think, a significant dent in that vacancy rate this summer with those solutions that we've already implemented that I delineated. We're working on a comprehensive EMS strategy, as the fire chief mentioned, but doing the same thing over and over again is, the definition of insanity. So putting out more paramedic ambulances or trucks or engines to deal with homeless patients or mental health patients or substance abusers is not the answer. The answer is let's put specialized units out there so our medics and firefighters can go to the incidents they're trained to do, and then have these patients get the help they need, as opposed to just throwing more of the same. And that's where the innovation and the transformative approach and paradigm shift has to be married up with the need to have the critical infrastructure. And I think that's what our analysis deals with on a daily basis. But I think to reflect, we say, more of the same is not the answer, because getting up at 3 a.m. when you're exhausted to go for someone who's hearing voices doesn't make a lot of sense. If I can have an advanced provider medically clear that patient, get them to definitive mental health counseling, and that engine of paramedics available for a fire or a heart attack. I mean, that's really the model we're trying to pursue.
Can I add on to that too, Madam President? As I look at this, there's two problems. The crisis is our increasing call load, number one. The second part is our deployment model. As you see in the chart before you, we are catching up with our paramedic firefighter vacancies. So that is on the way to being addressed. The next question in that area is, at what point can we expand our rotational? We don't want to expand right now. That would exacerbate our current staffing model, or staffing level, I should say. Now, how do we address the first part? Like the doctor said, we can't do what we always used to do, add an ambulance, because it doesn't solve the increasing call load. What does solve, or help to solve, that is the addition of a new resource, which is the Advanced Provider Response Unit, because we can get to those EMS super users and solve their problem, or we can refer them to like Partners in Care, a social service agency. On the front end, by having APs at Metro, we can address the call load there too. When it's truly not a life-threatening emergency, we will not dispatch an ALS rescue. We'll figure out another option, which may be a taxi voucher, maybe the APRU will follow up with an appointment. So we're hitting it from different angles, the problem. And I think my goal in the next strategic plan is to include a well thought out approach to addressing both pieces, the call load and deployment model.
Okay, so I kind of feel like this conversation is really about what kind of department we are. I mean, we hire, we train, and we recruit firefighters. But a big part of our increase in workload is paramedics. So this is kind of an identity issue for the department. And so this is why I think it's not just a simple item that you just throw out and say, bring me back this report, because a lot of people are going to have a say in that. I want to make sure that everybody understands that that's kind of what's at stake.
So what approach would you recommend then to solicit the information that we want so we can have that nuanced discussion?
No, I'm just saying that I want everybody to think carefully about this. And I want the department to take its time. And I want everybody who wants to weigh in on that to do that.
Yes, I agree.
And I'm keenly aware that there are many paramedics who are just waiting to be approached to share their ideas, because they have many ideas out there in the field of ways that they could help the department. And so I'm happy to hear you say you'd like to make sure that they are included. And with the ever-changing city that we're in, and in this department, everything is changing, just as the chief said. We may need to really look at certain parts of your request in this report to see if we still need to function the way that we've always functioned in the past.
Okay.
Yeah.
One last comment, Madam President. No disagreement about the fruits of the report that Commissioner Glazier is asking for. We're looking at it from a purely staff work perspective, include all these issues in our EMS strategic plan, do the staff work, come back to the commission to make sure we're all on the same page, include labor through our EMS work group, which is Department and Labor combined, and then we move forward together in unison. I think that is the key. So I do support Commissioner Glazier's request for the info. I'm just proposing that it come through an EMS strategic plan.
Sure, but in the past, how that's worked is we get a fully formed strategic plan that we are asked for approval on, and we do not have an opportunity to weigh in on the options prior to that. And that's what I want to avoid, is that we get something that has been baked without our input, and then we don't have any ability because it's already given to us in a glossy, pre-printed format. So I am all for this in the context of the development of an EMS strategic plan. However, I am not for a strategic plan showing up and us given the opportunity to approve or not approve it when it's already been printed. So that's why I'm asking for this to be done. And if the dates need to shift, then the dates need to shift. We can discuss that. We deserve an opportunity to weigh in on it.
Absolutely. You will be part of the process. I wouldn't expect you to approve something you did not weigh in on. This is what I mean about being collaborative with both labor, the commission, and the department. Everybody has a chance to weigh in, voice their opinion. We weigh the options and choose a path.
And that sounds good. Let's do that. Let's be collaborative. Let's make sure we include this option in what gets weighed. And that's why that's there. I want to see this included as an option that gets weighed. We may decide this is a terrible idea and that we should not move forward with the one option that I'm saying that should be analyzed. Fine. I want us to be able to see what all the options are, though, without foreclosing any options, because as we've discussed around this table, and very rightly so, there are real pressing questions about our deployment model that need to be addressed and how we staff. And beyond it, within that conversation is questions of what are our metrics that we are striving for and what are the appropriate solutions to them. It may be more resources. It may not be more resources. It may be different resources. It might be just optimization of the resources that we have. So, but that is a larger conversation that we have to be able to have that puts the options on the table. And like I said, within the collaboration, we may arrive at a conclusion that, options A through F are no good, and we're going with G. Fine.
So look at all those options, and we'll talk about them.
Great.
And then we'll put together a report, and we'll consider it.
Do you need to get to council, or can we ask you a few more questions?
No, apparently it was approved on consent, so I'm here.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
So a while back, so the EMS captain role, you mentioned the EMS captains within the context. I think the EMS captain role has been one of some discussion in terms of what do they do. Can you talk a little bit about how we've narrowed that role or focused that role?
Well, first of all, they finally have a home. They report to Chief Fortman. So the lines of communication are open. There's continuous communication between him, EMS Bureau leadership, and EMS captains. There's regularly standing face-to-face meetings. There's one-on-one ride-outs. Their focus is on-scene medical supervision and oversight, training, EPCR review, and supporting our members in the field in terms of medications, equipment, ongoing needs, investigations, and serving as a liaison between the fire department and the medical community. And that's one of the strengths of our system is when any healthcare professional has a question or concern about any of the care provided by our members, as opposed to not having someone to call and then writing a complaint, they're able to call an EMS captain 24/7, and he or she can respond, find out the details of the issue, and then determine the best course of action, whether it's kudos, informal training, formal training, recommendation for policy change. So they are out there as our eyes and ears. They are engaged. We've offloaded some busy work in terms of the controlled medications. They have a clear chain of command. They work closely with the geographic bureau commanders and the field command. But I think their being home in the EMS commission, in the EMS bureau, is logical, is working extremely well. We've had quite a turnover in EMS captains. Some of our more senior folks have retired. We have some phenomenal newly promoted EMS captains who are doing a phenomenal job out there. They're engaged, they're proactive, they're having an impact, and they're doing a great job. And we can continue to support them and refine that mission. I think Chief Fortman has done a phenomenal job dealing with that group because they've had concerns, as you alluded to. And I think now they know they have 100% support to the EMS Bureau. We fostered relationships through the rest of the chain of command. So they report to us, but they're an integral part of the command staff of the leadership at the battalion level. They work well with the members in the field. and they perform a vital role for us in providing the best possible care.
Great. And as part of that, did you actually develop a job description for them that is formal?
We have a job description. We have an orientation and training manual. And particularly our new EMS captains have done a phenomenal job and proactive to make sure incidents that aren't going well go the right way, deal with some unusual incidents, high-risk incidents, into-facility transfers, MCIs, interfacing with law enforcement, you name it. They're an integral part of our organization. They've really stepped up, and I think they finally in the Bureau they belong, and they realize they report to a special duty battalion chief in our Bureau. They're an integral part of the command team in the field.
Very good. Glad to hear that. You mentioned mental health. And a while back, Chief Rose presented on a mental health training, I believe it was called AIRS. Was that rolled out, and was there any kind of follow-up on that? Was that a successful rollout? Has it helped our members in the field? And that really had, as I recall, had to do with providing some additional level of training of how do our members best work with patients who are exhibiting, serious mental health challenges.
Yeah, I believe that that's going to be placed on Target Solutions. It's being finalized. That work is also being done with the collaboration of Chief Berdowie. It'll be placed on Target Solutions. And again, as we get more APRUs out there, that's going to help us really take this to the next level to not only help deal with these patients, but treat them in the field and get them to definitive care. So that's ongoing.
Okay, so maybe after that comes out, maybe we, I think the statistics are really compelling when we saw what those look like in terms of the numbers of calls for service we got related to specific mental health. I think it's worth revisiting to see how that continues to evolve. And certainly the advanced practitioners are going to be a huge asset for us in there, but we will still respond our traditional frontline resources to those issues too.
Right. In addition to that, because we know the APRUs is one now, there'll be more to come. In addition to that training, we've applied, we've submitted a letter of intent to the state EMS authority to conduct pilot programs to train certain cadres of paramedics to be eligible to perform their own medical clearance of certain mental health patients in the field and transport those patients directly to Exodus themselves.
Great.
So we're working with the county and the state on a pilot to do that, which is going to help us immensely. And also through careful analysis, we've downgraded the number and type of resources that respond to mental health emergencies. As a matter of fact, the latest changes were implemented August 1st.
Meaning, sorry, can you just...
that now some of the mental health patients who are deemed to be low risk in terms of suicidality will dispatch an EMT ambulance non-emergency rather than tying up a fire company or paramedic ambulance.
Got it. Okay. You mentioned TDS, and I know we got a great report on that earlier this year. I think those numbers were they were about a year old, so perhaps in the early part of 2018, we could revisit that just to hear how that continues to evolve. I think that's obviously a very important piece of our response times. Looking at wall time, so we haven't talked about wall time in a while, but I know that continues to be an issue for our department, and certainly from an optimization standpoint of our medics being delayed at hospitals in terms of dropping off patients. A while back you had begun some conversations. I'm curious if those have borne fruit, or if you have any thoughts on where we are with wall time right now. Has it gotten better, gotten worse, stayed the same?
Clearly, wall time is a very significant issue. While not saying it's okay, because it's, we're not the only department that's dealing with that. It's a nationwide problem, not just a local or statewide issue. We're part of a task force with the Department of Health Services to deal with it. We've had conversations with Healthcare Association in Southern California for CEOs at various hospitals. We're finalizing a trial program in Central and South bureaus to allow our EMS captains to offload patients who are medically stable but cannot safely go to triage to be put in portable cots and then get our ambulances back out on the street. This is a very highly complex problem. We're also going to be able to better reconcile the accuracy of our data with AVL. There is no magic bullet to this solution. As I think some of the commissioners mentioned before, it comes down to supply and demand. Emergency department volume has gone up exponentially since the Affordable Care Act was passed several years ago, some 20 to 25% increase in volume. There has not been a corresponding increase in inpatient beds. And the reason the mental health patients are so important is because when we take a mental health patient to a non-LPS certified emergency department, they often will occupy an ED bed with 3 to 5 days, and therefore a patient who we bring in with chest pain has nowhere to go. So the downstream effects are significant. I can tell you we're working in earnest. There's no panacea to this. I'm confident our pilot program, I think, will be successful. We call it a hot cot program, again, where we have multiple rescues down on the wall. And the patients don't need cardiac monitoring or advanced life support, or EMS captains will be dispatched and then determine 4 or 5 patients whom could be safely moved to these portable cots that have side rails that are low to the ground. Give a report to the triage nurse, leave 2 of our firefighter EMTs to watch those 5 stable patients, and have 4 ambulances released back into the field. We're not going to do that unilaterally. Obviously, we're going to do that with our partners in terms of the healthcare community and HASC and the CEOs and DHS. But we know it is a significant problem. There is not an easy solution for this, and we're tracking the data and doing what we can to come up with some solutions.
And that hot cot program has not been implemented yet, but that's coming? Or
we have had the cots custom made. Captain Escobedo's running point on that project, working on the training. We're going to have formal discussions with HASC, DHS, and the hospitals where that'll be impacted. It'll be in battalions 1 and 13. I estimate we'll be able to implement that probably after the first of the year.
And that's for mental health patients?
No, ma'am. That's for stable patients for whom our ambulances are holding the wall. They may be mental health patients. They may be inebriated patients, patients who are not on cardiac monitors, but are not, for some reason, are not safe or stable to go to triage. And that's where the wall time is hard to reconcile.
And as far as the question of do you feel like it's gotten worse, gotten better, stayed the same, is that just hard to know?
We have data. It's probably gotten worse because our volume's gone up. So we're transporting, low 600s, probably 610 to 650 patients a day, which is a significant increase year over year. Some of our busier days, we've transported over 700 patients a day. The number of hospitals have gone down. So the problem has gotten worse based on supply and demand. And again, we're trying to look at alternative solutions to deal with this problem. But again, where we're getting the most traction in terms of collaboration for public-private partnerships with new APRUs is when we meet with leadership from these hospitals and emergency department leadership and say, we'll be able to divert some of the mental health patients and inebriates out of your ED and take them to a sobering center or Exodus. They basically say, here's the check, because they can't provide that help, and they know their ER is overwhelmed with these patients and overcrowded. So we have a multi-pronged approach to this. But make no mistake, this is not a problem that's easy to fix, because at the end of the day, it comes down to increasing supply and limited to shrinking demand. Other way around, excuse me.
Yes.
Increasing demand, limited to shrinking supply. So we're working. There's a solution we can't come up with unilaterally, but we're doing all we can to come up with innovative solutions to deal with this.
And are there specific legislative solutions we're pursuing currently?
We are pursuing them. Nothing's been forthcoming. CMS, which is Center for Medicare and Medicaid Services, which oversees Medicare, Medi-Cal, Medicaid, have opined in writing that once a patient arrives on the grounds of the hospital, which includes the ambulance bay and triage area, it's the legal and legal responsibility of the hospital to care for the patient, not ours. And that's where it ends. Other people have suggested we bill for our staff time. I'm not aware of any legal ability for us to do so. Other municipalities have tried to do that unsuccessfully. Again, it's not so much us versus them. The most heavily impacted hospitals are clearly overwhelmed, and there's nowhere to go. I can tell you at my shop at USC, and the medics will tell you this, when they're on the wall, it's not for lack of effort of my staff. There's nowhere to go. We're holding dozens of inpatients in the ED. The psych ER is full. There's nowhere to go. So it really comes down to the equation of supply and demand.
Okay, yeah, and just going back to some comment I made earlier, I very much appreciate that we have a public health unit, and I think many of us have said for a long time, as I know you've always known, that whether we like it or not, we're in the public health business. I think I'm interested to hear on what some of the, or I'm interested to discuss further what some of the other proactive measures that can be taken as far as trying to, around the education side of how do we educate individuals around there are different ways to be taken care of than going to the emergency room, or particularly via ambulance. So certainly support the directions that we're taking with the APRU and those kinds of things. But I would like to hear more about how we're integrating some of those educational components around this is where you can find a clinic that's down the street from you, or this is how you can sign up for insurance if you don't have it, or if you have insurance, the insurance company will be reaching out to you to talk to you about different ways to meet your needs than calling 911, because that's expensive for the insurance companies too. And some folks may not even know what they're paying for in those cases. And I understand that a lot of folks that we serve probably are on Medicare, but even the Medicare providers are interested in saving money too.
Yeah, and that's one of the successes, our collaboration with Partners in Care and APRU to help these people navigate through the system, get insurance. The burgeoning homeless population obviously is a huge issue that we're trying to deal with other stakeholders.
Yeah.
Not an easy solution, but we're dealing with societal issues. With a 25% increase in the homeless population, these are high utilizers of the system. Not an easy solution, but we're trying to do what we can to be innovative.
Yeah.
But very, very challenging.
Well, yeah, I appreciate your stance that this is not an adversarial issue, that this is a partnership issue. I completely agree with you. We're obviously not going to get anywhere by fighting with hospitals. I just encourage I would encourage us to bring in as many partners as we can on this, because I think we align across economic issues and in addition to patient care issues there. And so thinking about who else could we be bringing into this conversation to help us think through what to do with this.
One of the problems that we have in some of our areas with the hospital transport, with ambulances, is that they clearly believe, and I think it's true, that they get services faster and quicker if they go in an ambulance. Mm-hmm. You can wait in a waiting room for hours and never be seen, but if you're transported in an ambulance, they get to you. And so the word is, with the people who are in most need, this is the way you get your services. Whether that helps through education, we don't have enough hospitals. That's one of the problems also. We have a lot of problems, it seems, but one of them is that we don't have enough places to go to. But to get in there and get services, they all know that they get in an ambulance, that they will be seen first over the people in the waiting room. And I've had some past experiences with that myself. One of the things I wanted to ask you about was some of the programs were pilots at the beginning, and now you're wanting to expand them. So then they go into the regular personnel hiring process there was some position you said you were going to add 8 new somethings to. So they will go through the regular process of being hired.
That's correct, ma'am. For example, the APRU, once the one-year pilot was concluded, we replaced the firefighter paramedic through the normal hiring and interview process. And we'll do the same with the subsequent APRUs.
Okay. And these are this is a process that's been agreed to with the union,
yes,
all the labor groups. Okay. Thanks.
All right. My very last question here. When you think about the metrics that you use to think about whether the EMS system is performing or not performing, what are your top-level metrics that you think about, and how are we doing against them?
We look at a number of metrics, some of which are dispatcher-assisted CPR rates, our rate of return of spontaneous circulation, our acquisition of 12 lead EKGs on chest pain, the administration of certain medications for critical incidents, call processing time, airway management.
If you had to pick top three, what would they be?
Top 3 is probably response times to critical incidents, airway management, and adherence with our AMA policy.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Do you have targets you measure against, or do you just kind of generally see where we are?
We have targets. Many of the QI metrics that we actually leaders on, that the state and county have followed suit. We have 90% compliance thresholds. We have a very robust EMS quality improvement unit that measures these metrics, shares them with the field for corrective actions and remediation. And they're most of the same benchmarks that other jurisdictions are using as well.
Okay. Well, I think as the department is undertaking the development of these metrics per a of my previous requests. I'm interested to see how those fit into there and how we're doing against those benchmarks.
Yeah, we're trying to balance quantity with quality, some of which is easier to measure than others. I will just, final comment, say the issues that have been raised this morning are all timely and are important issues. Chief Terrazas and I attended a meeting with a number of fire chiefs up and down the state of California with their EMS leadership. And not only are these issues ubiquitous up and down the state, it's safe to say that we are far ahead of just about every other agency in the state of California in tackling these problems. And the follow-up conversations we had at the meeting and subsequent communications to myself and Chief Terrazas was, how do we follow what you're doing, follow your lead, and how are you doing it so quickly? So not to sound self-serving, but we collectively have a really robust team here and trying to tackle issues that are societal, that are not easy to tackle. Every department's having trouble recruiting and retaining paramedics. The call load's gone up nationwide. People have more insurance, but they're all going to the emergency department, homelessness, mental health, substance abuse. We're trying to keep our eyes on our core mission, but also come up with innovative and transformative ideas to solve these ongoing problems.
Absolutely. And notwithstanding the requests for additional information, certainly I recognize that that we are at the forefront on solving a lot of these problems. And that certainly speaks well of our department and our departmental leadership, and I very much appreciate it. Like you, I see the issues, as I know a number of other folks do when they get out into the field. I appreciate the willingness to continue to push through on some of these things and continue to analyze, reanalyze, and think outside the bounds of our traditions. I think it's really important for us to do that if we're going to maintain our status as the number one fire department in the world and not 1A. So I think we're certainly continuing down that path of holding that status, and look forward to seeing what else you come up with.
Thank you.
Thank you. So we were given this chart, so we should move to adopt, to receive and file the chart.
Okay, I'm going to move to receive and file the chart associated with item 5B.
All in favor?
Aye.
So that concludes that. We do have one public comment. I don't know if she's still here. Melanie Ochoa from the ACLU. She probably went to Police Commission. All right. Okay. Thank you.
Move to adjourn.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.